Think about the last argument you had. You explained your position. You backed it up with reasons. You made your case clearly and completely. And somehow, the more you said, the less they believed you. The more you justified, the weaker you sounded. You left that conversation feeling drained and misunderstood. Now think about the most powerful man you have ever been in a room with. Not the loudest, not the most talkative. The one who said almost nothing. The one whose words, when they came, landed like stones. Everyone waited for him to speak. Everyone listened when he did. That man was not born different from you. He learned something specific, something that ancient strategists, modern psychologists, and the most dangerous men in history all discovered independently. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is where power lives. You were taught to communicate. From the time you were a child, the lesson was the same. Speak up. Express yourself. Make your voice heard. And you followed that instruction. You learned to explain, to justify, to fill every silence with words. And it cost you more than you know. Every time you over-explained a decision, you signaled doubt. Every time you defended yourself without being attacked, you handed someone leverage. Every time you rushed to fill a silence, you revealed your discomfort. And the people around you, whether they knew it consciously or not, registered every single one of those signals. Dr. Matthias Mell at the University of Arizona spent years studying human conversation patterns across thousands of recorded hours of real interaction. His research confirmed what strategists have known for centuries. The volume of words a person produces has no correlation with their actual influence. None. The men who talk the most are almost never the men who decide the most. His data showed an inverse relationship. The more a person spoke in group settings, the less weight their individual statements carried with the others present. There is a specific type of exhaustion that comes from this pattern. You finish a conversation where you said everything right, made every valid point, presented every logical argument, and still walked away feeling like you lost. That feeling is accurate. You did lose. Not because your arguments were wrong, because you made them at all. The boardroom, the negotiation, the relationship. The moment someone asks why you made a certain choice, and you start explaining in detail, something shifts in the room. Their posture changes. Their eyes change. They are no longer evaluating your reasoning. They are evaluating your need to be understood. And that need is expensive. This pattern has a name in psychology. It is called justification anxiety. Dr. Robert Cialdini at Arizona State University documented it across decades of research on persuasion and social influence. When a person feels compelled to explain without being asked, they are not demonstrating confidence. They are demonstrating that they need approval. And the need for approval is the opposite of authority. The pattern runs deeper than individual conversations. It shapes how entire careers develop. Dr. Adam Grant at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania studied thousands of professionals over a decade to understand what separated those who advanced quickly from those who stagnated. One of the clearest differentiators was not performance quality, which was roughly equivalent across groups. It was communication discipline. The professionals who advanced most consistently were those who spoke precisely, asked sharp questions, and left meetings without having filled every silence. Their colleagues described them as people who always seemed to know more than they said. And that perception alone changed how they were treated in every subsequent interaction. This is not about being cold. It is not about being distant or difficult. It is about understanding a law that the most effective men in history applied without exception. Power does not explain itself. Power does not justify itself. Power acts and waits and lets the results speak. What you are about to learn is how to stop bleeding influence every time you open your mouth. Principle 1. Silence creates pressure that words never can. In 1972, psychologist Stanley Milgram at the City University of New York conducted a series of experiments on social compliance. One consistent finding across every variation was this: when one person went silent after a statement, the other person almost always filled the silence. And the person who filled the silence almost always gave more than they intended to give. More information, more concessions, more vulnerability. This effect held regardless of the status of either participant, regardless of the topic, and regardless of whether the silence was intentional or accidental. This is not a quirk of lab conditions. This is hardwired human behavior. Silence feels like a void, and the human brain is designed to fill voids. The discomfort of silence triggers what neuroscientists call the compulsion to respond, a deep social reflex rooted in our evolutionary history as tribal animals, where silence between individuals often signaled danger or rejection. When you go silent after making a point, the other person experiences an internal pressure that has nothing to do with what you said. They feel compelled to respond, to clarify, to offer something. In negotiation, this is called the awkward silence technique. But it is not a technique, it is a law. Marcus Aurelius used it in every council session he led as Emperor of Rome. His advisors reported that he would ask a single question, then wait, sometimes for a very long time. And in that waiting, the room would reveal itself. People would speak to fill the silence, and in doing so expose their actual positions, their fears, their loyalties. Aurelius gathered more intelligence from silence than from interrogation. He wrote about this practice in his private journal, noting that the man who asks and then waits always knows more at the end of the conversation than the man who asks and then answers his own question. The application is direct. The next time you make a point in a meeting, in a negotiation, in any high-stakes conversation, stop, make the point, then say nothing. Do not add context. Do not soften it. Do not explain it further. Let it land. Let the other person carry the weight of the silence. Watch what they do with it. What they do in that moment will tell you everything you need to know about where the power actually sits. The silent man is not passive. He is the most active person in the room. He is the one choosing what to observe, while everyone else is choosing what to reveal. Sun Tzu addressed this in The Art of War more than 2,500 years ago. He wrote that the general who gives the fewest orders commands the most obedient army. Because when orders are rare, each one carries absolute weight. When orders are constant, soldiers begin to filter them. They decide which ones matter. The same dynamic operates in every relationship you have. When your words are rare, each one is treated as signal. When they are constant, people begin to screen you. And a man being screened has already lost. Principle 2. Every word you add after your point weakens it. In 2009, Dr. Nero Sivanathan at London Business School published research on what he called the dilution effect in communication. The The study involved presenting subjects with different versions of arguments, some short and strong, some long, with additional supporting but weaker points added. The finding was precise and counterintuitive. When a person adds weak arguments to strong ones, the overall persuasive impact of the strong arguments decreases. Adding more information does not strengthen your position, it dilutes it. Most men do not understand this. They believe that more justification means more credibility. They add point after point after point, each one intended to reinforce the last. What actually happens is the opposite. The listener begins averaging the arguments rather than stacking them. Strong plus weak does not equal very strong. It equals medium. Every qualifying statement, every additional explanation, every nervous addition pulls the average down. The research showed that participants rated a 3-point argument significantly lower in persuasiveness when a 4th weak point was added than when only the 3 strong points were presented. President Theodore Roosevelt was known for making requests in exactly 1 sentence. He made the request. He stopped. If the other person asked for more information, he provided it in exactly the amount required. Nothing more. His advisors described the experience of receiving a request from Roosevelt as feeling like a direct order, even when it was not, because there was no softening, no justification, just the statement. That quality of his communication was noted by every foreign diplomat who dealt with him as one of the most unsettling and effective aspects of his presence. You know this effect from your own experience. Think about the last time someone told you they were sorry, and then kept talking. By the time they finished explaining why they were sorry, and what the circumstances were, and how it was not entirely their fault, the apology was gone. The words had canceled themselves out. Compare that to one person who looked you in the eye and said only 2 words, "I am sorry," and then said nothing else. Which one felt more real? The rule is simple. Make your point. Stop. If they need more, they will ask. If they don't ask, they understood. Either way, you have said what needed to be said, and nothing that did not. This is not a social skill. It is a discipline. And like all disciplines, it requires practice before it becomes natural. Principle 3. The man who does not react owns the frame. In social psychology, frame control is one of the most studied and least understood dynamics in human interaction. Dr. Gregory Bateson at Stanford University spent his career mapping how frames operate in communication. His central finding was that whoever defines the emotional context of an interaction controls its outcome. And the most effective way to control a frame is not to argue with it. It is to remain unmoved by it. When someone provokes you and you react, you have accepted their frame. You have agreed that their provocation deserves a response. You have told them, and everyone watching, that they have the power to determine your emotional state. That is not a small thing. That is a complete transfer of authority from you to them in a single moment. And once you have transferred that authority, recovering it in the same interaction is nearly impossible. The dynamic has been set. Everyone in the room, including you, now understands who holds the lever. The samurai tradition had a specific teaching on this. A warrior who could be provoked was considered already defeated, because provocation was a test before the battle. If you reacted to the test, you showed your enemy exactly where to apply pressure. If you did not react, you gave them nothing. You remained a closed system, impenetrable. and that is far more intimidating than any display of anger. Miyamoto Musashi wrote extensively about this in the Book of Five Rings, noting that the composed warrior creates fear not through aggression, but through stillness. Because stillness in the face of threat is the one response an opponent cannot prepare for. The most effective response to provocation is a slight pause, direct eye contact, and a completely neutral continuation of whatever you were doing. Not a dramatic pause, not a cold stare. A natural pause, as if you are simply processing information, and then a calm continuation. This response says everything without saying a word. It says that what they just did was not significant enough to interrupt your thinking. It reduces the provocation to background noise. Non-reaction is not suppression. Suppression is when you feel the emotion and try to hide it. Suppression is visible and exhausting and eventually breaks. Non-reaction at this level is a trained state where the provocation genuinely does not reach you because you have built a framework inside yourself that does not need the external world to behave in a specific way in order for you to remain functional. That framework is built through practice, not performance. Dr. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies a man's freedom. What he was describing was not a philosophical abstraction. It was a neurological reality. Every provocation travels through your nervous system and hits your prefrontal cortex before producing a response. The man who has trained that space to be wide enough for a choice will always respond differently from the man who has let that space collapse to zero. Training the space is what practice means, and it starts with the smallest provocations, not the largest ones. Principle 4. What you withhold is more powerful than what you share. Robert Greene in the 48 Laws of Power dedicated an entire law to this principle. Law 3. Conceal your intentions, not because deception is virtuous, but because full transparency in a world of competing interests is a form of strategic suicide. The man who tells everyone his plans has no plans. He has announcements. And announcements invite interference, preemption, and competition from every direction simultaneously. There is a concept in game theory called information asymmetry. Dr. Joseph Stiglitz at Columbia University won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2001 for his work on this principle. The core idea is simple. In any interaction where information is not equally distributed, the party with more information holds structural advantage. Always. Without exception. This applies to economics. It applies equally to every human relationship, every negotiation, every conversation, where two people want different things. Most men overshare because oversharing feels like connection. When you tell someone your plans, your fears, your motivations, you feel closer to them. And that feeling is real. But what you have also done is handed them a map of how to manage you. Anyone who knows what you want, what you fear, and what you are planning can position themselves perfectly relative to you. Not because they are malicious, because that is simply what humans do with information. We use what we know. We cannot help it. And neither can they. The correction is not to become secretive or paranoid. It is to develop the discipline of asking one question before you share anything. Does this person need this information to help me? If the answer is yes, share it. If the answer is no, keep it. This single filter will change your relationships, your negotiations, and your position in every room you enter. Not because people will like you less, because they will understand you less. And what people cannot fully understand, they cannot fully manage. The man of mystery is not mysterious because he tries to be. He is mysterious because he has learned the discipline of selective disclosure. And that discipline, practiced over time, creates an aura that talkative men can never manufacture, regardless of how interesting the things they say actually are. Principle 5. Silence under attack is the highest form of strength. In 2013, Dr. Emma Sipala at Stanford University's Center for Compassion and Altruism Research published research on what she called self-regulation under social threat. Her study tracked individuals in high-pressure professional environments over 18 months. The finding was specific. The individuals rated highest in social power and influenced by objective observers were not the ones who responded most forcefully to criticism or attack. They were the ones who responded least, who absorbed the attack, paused, and replied only when they chose to, with only what was necessary. The research also identified what Sipala called the observer effect. When a third party watches two people interact, and one absorbs a challenge without reacting, the observer consistently attributes higher status to the non-reactor. Not higher agreeableness, not higher patience, higher status, higher competence, higher authority. The silent response to attack does not just preserve your standing with yourself, it actively elevates it in the eyes of everyone watching. And in any professional or social context, the observers outnumber the participants. There is a specific discomfort in being attacked publicly and saying nothing. Every instinct you have been trained to follow says to defend yourself, to explain, to correct the record. And every time you follow that instinct, you give the attacker exactly what they wanted, which is your engagement, your reaction, your attention. You validate the attack by responding to it. You validate the attacker by treating them as someone whose opinion requires your energy. And in doing so, you elevate them to a level of importance they did not hold before you responded. Abraham Lincoln was one of the most publicly attacked presidents in American history. Newspapers called him a buffoon, a tyrant, a coward, and incompetent. His policy was documented by his secretaries. He wrote letters in response to attacks, detailed, thorough, complete responses. Then he put the letters in a drawer and did not send them. He called it getting the anger out without feeding the fire. He processed the reaction privately and presented only the result publicly, which was often nothing at all. His silence in the face of public attack was so consistent that his critics eventually became frustrated by their inability to provoke him. And frustration is the one emotion that destroys credibility from the inside. This is not weakness. This is the most disciplined form of strength a man can demonstrate. Because silence under attack says something that no rebuttal can say. It says that the attack was not significant enough to require your response. It says that you are not governed by what others say about you. It says that you exist completely independently of their opinion. And there is nothing more powerful a man can communicate. The next time someone attacks you, publicly or privately, try this. Look at them. Say nothing for 3 full seconds. Then either change the subject or say the single most relevant thing and nothing else. Watch the energy in the room. Watch what happens to the attacker when their provocation produces no explosion. The weapon they brought was designed to ignite something. When there is nothing to ignite, the weapon is useless. And they know it. Principle 6. The quality of your silence determines the quality of your words. Dr. Anders Ericsson at Florida State University spent 30 years studying the development of expertise across domains ranging from chess grandmasters to concert pianists to elite surgeons. His most famous finding was that elite performers in every domain do not simply practice more. They practice with higher signal-to-noise ratios. They eliminate the unnecessary and develop a precision in their output that average performers never achieve because they never develop the discipline to cut. The cutting is what creates the mastery, not the adding. The same law governs language. The man who speaks rarely and selectively develops a very specific effect on the people around him. His words carry weight because they are not diluted by a constant stream of commentary. When he speaks, people listen, not because his words are inherently more profound, but because scarcity creates attention. The rare signal carries more information than the constant one. The brain is wired to pay more attention to something that appears rarely than to something that appears constantly. Warren Buffett is one of the most studied communicators in the business world, not because of how much he says, but because of how precisely he says what he says, and then stops. His annual letters to shareholders average fewer words than most corporate quarterly reports, and they are read more carefully than any document in the financial world. Analysts study every word because every word is there for a reason, and nothing is there that is not. When Buffett speaks publicly, the financial world stops to listen, not because he is famous. It is because, over decades, he built a reputation for saying only what he means, meaning only what he says, and saying nothing else. The discipline of silence is a discipline of editing. You develop it not in the moment of speaking, but in the moments before. The habit of asking yourself before you speak, is this necessary? Does this add to what has already been established? Is this for me or for them? Most of what men say in any given day is for themselves. It is self-soothing, self-promotion, or self-defense. The man who learns to identify those impulses and restrain them, who speaks only when the words genuinely serve the communication, becomes a different kind of presence entirely. Not cold, not aloof, more present. Because when a person is not performing, they are actually there. The goal is not to say less. The goal is to say only what is real. And when you do that consistently over time, everything you say becomes real to the people who hear it. Your credibility does not come from the content of what you say. It comes from the ratio of signal to noise across everything you have ever said. Peter Drucker, the most influential management thinker of the 20th century, was asked late in his career what single skill separated effective executives from ineffective ones. He did not say strategic thinking. He did not say decision-making ability. He said the capacity to stop talking before you have said too much. He had observed thousands of executives across 6 decades of consulting, and the pattern was universal. The ones who built lasting organizations and lasting influence were the ones who had developed, through years of conscious effort, the discipline to let their work speak and use their words only to direct attention to what the work had already demonstrated. Principle 7. The silent man controls the pace and therefore the outcome. In 2011, researchers at Harvard Business School, including Dr. Alison Wood Brooks, published findings on pace control in negotiation. The study analyzed hundreds of real negotiation transcripts across multiple industries and stake levels. Their data showed one result with extraordinary consistency. The party who controlled the pace of the conversation controlled the outcome. Not the party with the better arguments, not the party with more information. The party who determined when things moved fast and when things slowed down. Pace control is silence applied at the structural level. It is not just choosing when to speak and when not to speak. It is choosing the rhythm of the entire interaction. The man who answers immediately, who matches the other person's energy, who accelerates when the other person accelerates, has given up pace control entirely. He is following. He thinks he is participating. He is actually being led. And when you are being led in a negotiation, your outcomes reflect the other person's agenda, not yours. Henry Kissinger, one of the most effective negotiators of the 20th century, was known for a specific tactic in high-stakes meetings. He would receive a proposal, look at it, set it down, and say nothing for an extended period. Then he would ask a single clarifying question. Not a rebuttal, not a counteroffer, a question. The silence and the question together created an effect that opposing delegations described as deeply unsettling, because they had prepared for argument. They had not prepared for stillness. And stillness at the negotiating table communicates one thing above all others. I am not in a hurry, and when one party is not in a hurry, and the other is, the one who is not in a hurry always wins. The Japanese concept of emma applies directly here. Ma is often translated as negative space, but its deeper meaning is the pregnant pause, the moment of silence that gives shape to what comes before and after it. Japanese architects use it as deliberately as any structural element. Japanese musicians treat it as equal in importance to the notes, and Japanese negotiators, trained in this tradition, are known globally as some of the most effective practitioners in the world, precisely because they are comfortable in silence in ways that Western counterparts almost never are. The Western businessman across the table feels the silence as pressure and fills it. The Japanese negotiator feels the silence as information and waits. The gap between those two responses is the gap between who controls the outcome. You control pace by doing one thing: slowing down. When the conversation accelerates, you decelerate. When they push, you pause. When they want an immediate answer, you take the time you need. Not dramatically, not as a power display, simply as a man who does not allow external pressure to determine his internal rhythm. That internal consistency, maintained under pressure, is what pace control actually is. And the man who has it wins negotiations that have nothing to do with the merits of either position. The pace setter does not just win the negotiation, he sets the terms of every interaction that follows. Because once someone knows that you will not be rushed, they adjust their expectations. They stop trying to pressure you with urgency. They stop using deadlines as weapons. They stop trying to destabilize you with speed. And you have moved permanently into a different position in the relationship. One that no single argument, no single display of force, no single clever tactic could ever create. Now you know the 7 principles. The question is what you do with them starting today. The first action is an audit of your last 5 important conversations. Write down every moment where you spoke when silence would have been more powerful. Not to judge yourself, to map your pattern. Every man has specific triggers that override his discipline. One person over-explains when they feel their competence is being questioned. Another fills silences when they sense disapproval. Another justifies decisions when they feel the other person losing interest. You cannot change what you cannot see. The audit shows you exactly where you are giving away influence without realizing it. The second action is to implement a 3-second rule before every response in a high-stakes conversation. Not 3 seconds of obvious waiting, 3 seconds of genuine processing. Look at the person. Let the silence sit naturally. Then decide whether words are actually required. Most of the time they are not. You will be surprised how often the other person continues without you needing to say anything at all, and how often what they say next gives you information that would have been lost if you had jumped in immediately. The third action is to cut your next important communication by 30% before you send it. An email, a proposal, a message. Write it completely first. Then remove 30% of the words. Do not remove the ideas. Remove the padding around the ideas. The result will be stronger than what you started with, every single time. This is a mechanical fact about how language works under the dilution effect. The receiver will feel the difference even if they cannot name it. The fourth action is to practice non-response to one provocation this week. Not every provocation. 1. Choose the smallest one. Someone says something that would normally pull a reaction from you. Pause. Look at them. Say nothing or change the subject entirely. Feel what happens in the room. Feel what happens inside you. That single experience, done consciously and completely, will teach you more about frame control than any explanation of the principle ever could. The fifth action is to identify the one context in your life where you overshare most consistently. The one relationship or environment where you feel compelled to explain yourself, justify your choices, or account for your decisions without being asked. That specific context is where you are leaking the most power. Bring the discipline of selective disclosure into that one context first. Not everywhere at once. One place, one change, sustained over 30 days. The results will be visible to everyone around you before you even notice them yourself. Silent men do not win because they have nothing to say. They win because they have learned something that most men spend their entire lives never understanding. The man who controls his words controls himself. The man who controls himself controls the room. And the man who controls the room never needs to explain how he got there. The next video is already loaded. It covers a principle that silent men use before they ever enter the room. How they prepare their mind so that silence is not something they force, but something they inhabit naturally. Watch it now.